Hi friends, it's Julia. I'm here to share uh, 3 cards that I made with my December 2016 Scrap Stash Kit. The cards are for the challenge it's challenge number, let me tell you, challenge number 248 at the Use Your Stuff Challenge blog. It is one that required that you use, not required, it's a challenge to use watercolors and heat embossing on the same project. Now that could be a card, it could be a layout, scrapbooking layout, it could be a project life card or wall art, canvas art, whatever you want to create with it, it can be used for that. And so for what I've done here, I created 3 different cards. The cards are going to be for Christmas, I said that. But what I did was this last week after work, I did this in steps. The first thing I did was stamp out the image, and I used a gold metallic paint or metallic ink to stamp out the angel, and it's one of those inks that stays wet forever. And so I just sprinkled some clear embossing powder over the top of it and heat embossed it, and it came out very, very shiny and metallic looking. Not the best of I won't say not the best of image, but the watercolor paper that I'm using is textured, so it left it just didn't turn out exactly how I thought it would. It wasn't a smooth, clean surface like as if you were stamping directly down on smooth cardstock. Oh, that's the only way I can tell you it's not quite right. And on this card, it's the card front. I was going to stamp the sentiment, "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." I was going to stamp that on there below the horn that the angel is singing with, or you blowing. Oh my goodness, it's a late night. But there wasn't quite enough room. So what I decided to do was put the sentiment on a piece of vellum and then put it on the front of the card over top of the green. I've got on this one, the green comes up a little bit above there, and I'm thinking about putting something on there. I just don't know what I would put. So I didn't do anything with it right now, but I'm thinking that the green that comes above the vellum, I need to do something with. The other 2 cards that I created, I was telling you guys I did this in stages. First, I stamped one day after work. I stamped all 3 images and heat embossed all 3 images. Then I went through like the next day, because it was a process for me. Like the next day, I watercolored the paint on there. The watercolor paint on there. The watercolors they have a shimmer to them. And so, by the time you put watercolor paint on, if you let it dry naturally, you're not going to have as much warping as what I did on these. And even though I let it dry naturally on these, the paper it was just a package of really, really cheap paper, and I think I got it at maybe Michael's or Hobby Lobby just to kind of play around with. Nothing to get real serious about or get fancy with. And it's not the best quality of paper. And even when I let things dry naturally, I have horrific warping with it. So I thought, well, I'll do this in process over the week, and then when I get to the point of making the video, then I will, or when I get ready to put the cards together and record it, then I will have everything ready. I went ahead and picked out the cardstock, and I wanted metallic papers to go back behind there and different shades of either metallic paper or glitter paper to go behind there. And you can see this was very difficult for me. I did not wrap the vellum around it initially, so I'm wrapping it around it now after the card is already stuck down. So made it just a little bit challenging. But that's my life these days. I tend to make things just a little more difficult than what they typically need to be. And so because I didn't do that appropriately, I had to go back and add some glue dots in there. And even with putting all of that excessive tape on there, the adhesive back there, I'm still needing more, or it's still kind of warped even with the cardstock on. So now I'm going to add some bling to this. Sorry, just had a little moment. I had to clear off, put some of my tools back where they needed to be, and grab some bling. I'm putting these, they're, I don't know, sparkly little jewels from Close to My Heart in gold, and they're kind of heavy. And so with them being right there on that vellum, it's going to cause it to pucker up and pucker out. So I added a few glue dots back behind the bling just to keep them more secure, to keep them from popping off if the vellum moves. And here you see I'm putting more adhesive. I use more adhesive on these cards than I have in forever. I don't usually use that much adhesive because I know most of these cards that I make will go into the trash, and I'm okay with that. And so on the inside, I decided to stamp that sentiment, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And I don't know where I went. And so I'm inking it up, and you'll see me mash it down there. I didn't have it on the block straight, and so it doesn't look like it's going to stamp out straight, but it actually does. It turns out okay. And I do each of the envelopes when I do the cards. Oh, there you see I've got a little stamp that says handmade especially for you by Julia. And so I stamp that on the back of each of the cards that I make. And I stamp each of the envelopes with that little green holly leaf. There, the cluster of 3. And it's got little berries with it. But rather than put any type of bling or anything on the front of the card or on the front of the envelope, what I decided to do was dress it up a little, and I got a Sharpie pen out, a red Sharpie pen, and just covered over the little berries that are already there with the red ink. They don't look perfect, but hey, it's a handmade card with a decorated envelope, so it's not going to be perfect. So it doesn't look horrible. They're really cute, and you can look at the close-ups at the end of the video. I put some card close-ups there, some photographs. So here's card base number 2, and you can see I just spread that ink. Gosh, I spread the watercolor down at the bottom. And this time I get a little bit smarter with the vellum. I'll go through and I'll cut it down and actually fold it around my card base and then stamp on it so I know exactly where to stamp. And then I actually do wrap the vellum on there before I glue it down. And so on this one, I did things a little differently. I pulled out a different sentiment to use on here. I used it on the first one too. It says Merry Christmas on the outside of this card. The other card I added an additional sentiment on the front, but this one I just left as Merry Christmas, and then I'm going to stamp that holly, those 3 holly leaves on there. just trying to get my placement right because I really didn't leave myself quite enough room to get that on there, but I finally managed it. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to add some bling onto that. And I did go back with my heat gun and dry that ink on the vellum, because if not, it takes forever for it to dry. When I first started scrapbooking, I loved how my journaling looked printed out on vellum. And so I would do that on occasion, but sometimes I would have to let it sit there for like a week and it would still be wet. And so I'm always hesitant with printing or stamping or doing anything on vellum. And this was one of those days where everything kind of was a little bit haywire, and I knew it was haywire and I could see it being haywire, but I didn't fix it as I went along. What I did was I was using a sponge to just ink up the edges of my papers, and it was shredding. And it was shredding onto the cards. It was shredding onto the surface of my work surface. And so did I do anything about it? Did I throw the sponge away? Did I get a new sponge? Oh no, I kept using it and kept making a mess. And of course I couldn't get my layers right either. This was a doozy of a day when I was making these cards. But I eventually figured out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it and got it done. And you can see I'm using tons and tons and tons of adhesive on the back, again, because that watercolor paper was just so, it's just bad quality paper. It's fun to play on and let the kids play on. So maybe I'll give the rest of the pack to my grandkids. I did buy a new package of the Canson watercolor paper today at Walmart. When I got out this morning, I got a pack of that. It's the one that Kristen Warner, I think that's her name. She does a lot of card videos. It's the one that she recommends, the Canson. It's got another name to it. And so you can see I've got this down, and then I'm going to add some of those little bitty blings in the center there where the holly berries are on the stamp. And I'm going to add another little glue dot back behind those to keep them from flopping around and hopefully from popping off. Same sentiment on all three cards on the inside. This one, I believe, is the one that I put the holly leaf on just to see, what it would look like. And then I ended up going back and putting the holly leaf on the others as well. Yeah. And again, I don't get fancy and add any bling to the inside. I just get my red marker and color those little berries on the inside of the card like I do on the envelope. This was much easier to break down in steps over the course of a couple of days. Much easier than trying to record everything on the same day and, doing each step. That would have taken forever. Really like how that one turned out. And then this is the third card. And again, I get my steps all messed up about what I'm going to use, the glitter paper or not glitter paper, the metallic paper or not metallic paper. Anyway, I decided to stamp my sentiment directly on the watercolor front. And you can look at it and tell, you can't necessarily see it here, but you can see it up, in person that the ink was still wet. and I couldn't just have wet ink. I needed to dry it some. And so I got my heat tool out and I dried that, and it dried almost instantaneously. But it just needed that little extra bit of heat. And so here's another issue: when I put the glitter paper down and all that adhesive, it didn't stick. And so I added some liquid glue and just glued the heck of it with that. And then you have to hold it down, and then it makes it even more warpy because it's wet. Oh, it was a mess. But they're done. This year I've planned out I'm going to make 5 cards every month until December. Well, December included, so that I'll have 60 cards by the end of the month, or by the end of the year, for Christmas. I still have a few left over that a friend of mine gave me last year. She cleaned out her stash, and she cleaned out about 50 or 60 cards and asked me if I wanted them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm no dummy. I took them. I'm like, heck yeah, bring them on. That's, that many I don't have to make. Well, I had made, up to that point, I had made about 25 or 30 cards for my own stash. And then she gave me those. So I stopped making Christmas cards about midway through the year last year, through June. And I still have some of hers left over this year, but I thought, I'm going to keep adding to my stash all year. And if I have leftover, I have leftover. If I don't, I don't, I send out typically about 55 to 60 Christmas cards every year. And I know that most of them will end up in the trash, and I'm okay with that. It's not a big thing. Those people that I know that keep them or tell me that they keep them, I always try to send them some extra special cards. These cards I would not consider extra special cards. I mean, they're special because I made them, and I took the time, but they're not ones that I would. If these were given to me, I might keep it for a year or two, but then I might pull it apart and use the scraps to make other layouts. Anyway, that's it. That's my final card. Thank you guys for sticking around and watching this video till the end. I would really, really love it if you would hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so that you can see all the videos that I put up. I have a lot of fun making the videos and making the projects that I do. It's not always fun doing the editing part, but what do you do? I guess you can't have one without the other. Anyway, thanks for sticking around today, guys, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Bye.